it's Steve Jamieson here, Managing Broker of RE/MAX Crest Realty Westside with your frequently asked questions. Today's question comes from one of our realtors at our North Shore office, and they're asking, I'm using the new Web Forms contract of purchase and sale dated May 16th containing the new clauses regarding assignments, but my buyer wants the ability to assign this to his wife prior to closing, so I added a clause to that effect, but have not crossed off Section 20A of the new contract. Do I still need to include the new seller disclosure statement with my offer? And the answer is yes, and the reason is that, well, two things I want to discuss first. You've got a contradictory clause in your contract of purchase and sale. On the one hand, you've got 20A that says it can't be assigned, and if it is, any profit goes to the seller. But on the other hand, now you've added a clause that says they can assign it without the permission of the seller to their wife. So which one is it? You've got two contradictory clauses, and you shouldn't have something that's unclear in a contract of purchase and sale. So my recommendation, and talk to your managing broker about this, would be to put something like, notwithstanding Section 20A of the contract of purchase and sale, the buyer has the right to assign this to his wife without any prior consent of the seller, something like that. And that way it's clear what your intention is. Regardless of what 20A says, this is what I'm going to do. So it just makes it much clearer, which is always better. But I do want to talk a little bit about the general requirements of the new assignment rules as well, because there seems to be some confusion around it. First, make sure that you're all using the new contract of purchase and sale that is dated May 16th. If you have Web Forms kits that you're using and you're just copying those, then when you copy it, the new contract should be applied to your kit. You just say, yes, please update my contracts. Whatever you do, please don't use an old kit and just change the names and change the dates and change the property address. I know for some of you that might be easier, but then you're still using old versions of the contract, which you're actually not allowed to be doing. So make sure that you use the new version. It takes care of it for you. It's got 20A in there spelling out the new assignment rules. And if you leave 20A intact, you don't cross it out, you don't change anything, then there's nothing else you need to do. It's business as usual. But if you do cross off 20A, either in part, because there's two parts of it, one is that it can be assigned without the, or they cannot be assigned without the permission of the seller, and another one that the seller is entitled to any profits. You are allowed to alter that if your buyer gives you those directions, so you could cross off one or both of those parts of the contract. You could also add a clause, like you did in your case, stating that notwithstanding 20A, I can assign this contract and you can deal with the profit as well through a clause in the contract. There's nothing wrong with that. But as soon as you cross out or alter in any way any section of 20A, then you need to include that seller disclosure. So very important that you include that. And remember that it's actually the buyer's agent's responsibility, it's your job as the buyer's agent, to send along that seller disclosure. Your buyer doesn't sign it, you don't sign it, but because you've altered the contract, it's your responsibility as the buyer's agent to send that disclosure along with your offer whenever you've modified 20A. So if you're a listing agent, then what do you do? Well, if I'm a listing agent and I get a contract of purchase and sale, the first thing I'm going to look at is the date at the bottom. Is it dated May 16th? If it is, I'm going to make sure that 20A is intact. And if there's no clause altering it, then I don't need to worry about it. But as soon as it's crossed off or there's a clause altering it, then I'm expecting to get that seller disclosure from the buyer's agent. If they don't, then it's my responsibility to call the buyer's agent and say, hey, you didn't do what you're required to do, please send it over. If they refuse for some reason, then it's going to be your job to inform your managing broker first and let them know they should be calling the other managing broker and inform them that one of their agents is not following the new requirements. But then, in addition to that, you need to make sure that your seller is aware that the contract has been modified. You need to make them aware that the way that it's modified potentially could allow the contract to be assigned. Potentially he's not entitled to any profit if it is assigned. And you need to give him the opportunity, if he wants to make changes, and as long as he's aware, then it's fine, but that's your responsibility as the listing agent to make sure the seller's been made aware of it. The other thing I want to make sure you're all aware of is just because there was a clause or not a clause in there altering 28 to start with, if during any point of the negotiations a clause is added that modifies 20A or 20A is crossed out partly or in whole, then at that point you would need to immediately request this disclosure. The buyer's agent again would be the one responsible for it to include that. So keep that in mind when you're negotiating. Any changes to 20A or any language that's altering 20A, allowing for assignments or profits or anything like that, then the new seller's declaration comes into play and the buyer's agent is supposed to be giving it to the seller. And again, if they don't, as the listing agent, it'll be your job to make sure your seller is informed and then he can make a decision. Again, keep in mind that the new rules do not apply to commercial leases, but they do apply to commercial sales. So business asset sales, sales of businesses, it all applies to that as well, but it does not apply to development units as defined under the Real Estate Development Marketing Act. So that doesn't necessarily mean that all new construction is exempt, so check with your managing broker. Most condominium units, most new construction would be exempt, but not all. And so again, if you're in doubt, please check with your managing broker. I know it's a lot. I hope this helped. And if you have any questions, please send them in.